Yeah, so good morning and thank you, Amit, for having me over and more importantly, putting together an outstanding panel. So that kind of reduces my pressure because Rakesh, in some sense, in a way, captured brilliantly the overall bank BFSI outside in view. And interestingly, I'm sure if you see presentations of various banks, financial institutions, uh, the language is going to be very similar. In some sense, so one would really argue, so what's so different between various banks, even within India or outside India? But I think the real game is in executing it, right? One is to really understand the lay of the land, which is, I think, very important. And I'm sure all of us are pretty now conversant with the fact that it is indeed changing. The real challenge, and Rakesh alluded to it, is to how do corporations really respond to it. And corporations which... Okay, I'll try and speak a little louder. Is it clear?
Increase the volume.
Yeah, that's better. But I'll probably see the slides from here. Give me the hand mic. This works? Okay, I'll use this then. Is it better? Okay, I guess we're going to hand mic now. Yeah, that's got it. So I was just mentioning the fact that the strategy of most banks would, in some sense, an understanding of the market in many ways would sound very similar, but the real difference is how we're going to really execute it. And Rakesh alluded to the fact that it's the people in the corporation who often really make the difference in how well you're going to execute the whole transformation. So what I think I'll try and do is to probably have got just 2 slides in my presentation. The first slide in summary was what exactly as a bank, and it's more like a case study as to what we believe is going to be the real framework of how we're going to look at our opportunities going forward. But I guess I'll try and spend more time on the second slide because I think Rakesh did a brilliant job in presenting the larger, I would say, landscape. So in some sense, I think we have a good starting position. I also kind of pick up from what Dr. Varun said that he's the 4th batsman in the order, and which is good because often the real traditional or the specialist batsmen end by 4. And you'll realize that we are actually bowlers who have been asked to bat today. So in case there are a couple of bad nudges and awkward positions, please excuse us because after all, we are 5 and 6 and we're not supposed to bat. But nowadays, actually, that also changed. So let me first go on with what exactly is the broad framework for the bank. And some of this sound, good English, but the real challenge is to really make it happen within the corporation. So I think the first fundamental change that I think we are looking at, and I'm sure Rakesh mentioned the whole customer journey, is to really look at a customer end to end. I would argue, and Abhizar also is here to really share some information on that, is that most banks traditionally, definitely in India and even internationally, are in many ways organized around products or segments, if at all. They are seldom organized around the customer. That, I think, has been the traditional organization structure of most banking institutions. And that inherently brings into challenge how you're really going to serve a customer end to end. So, for example, if you were to really look at Tata's in India as a customer, or look at Infosys, or look at even an individual SME or MSME customer, how do you really serve the need of that customer end to end, be it a corporate banking product, be it transaction banking, commercial banking, or retail. Within retail, you have personal loans, etc., etc., etc. So in many ways, as a bank, we were organized very clearly around products and sometimes around segments, but we really could never take the bank to the customer end to end. So what we are really looking at is how do you really position our services and products from a customer perspective and really serve the customer end to end and ensure that we're able to get a complete 360-degree view of the customer opportunity and experience. So that is an easier strategy to articulate, but extremely difficult strategy to execute, because it fundamentally means you have to rewire the whole corporation in the way you're organizing yourself. And that, I think, is what I will touch upon in the second slide. Focus on micro markets, again, traditionally, and I can tell you my understanding for sure, and maybe it could have been different with different banks, and even within the bank, maybe different professionals. Micro markets, even understanding of a market was very, very different. For example, traditionally, the way we organized ourselves, we saw Bombay as maybe a market, we saw Delhi as a market, or metros as one market. Then there was this classification of urban, then semi-urban, then rural. So in some sense, Bombay was equal to Calcutta was equal to Chennai. But we didn't realize that Bombay itself is not a market. Right? Bombay has Colaba, it has Bandra, it has Borivali, and it has Palghar. So how do you really organize? And I, as an HR professional, I can tell you that we used to look at structures, resourcing, skilling, training, everything from, at best, a metro point of view. So, but we never looked at it by saying that, South Bombay would require a different, organization structure if required, to a structure that is required in Borivali, and the skills that are required by the employees to be deployed, because the products itself could be different. For example, as Rakesh would, bail me out, Colaba, Bandra would require more of the private banking, wealth management skills compared to what a Borivali or a Palghar ecosystem require. So how do I really profile those branches, man the skills of employees, even have a different organization structure? So in many ways, for us to really break down, and Bombay, Colaba, may be equal to a DEF call in Delhi, maybe equal to Tollygunge in Calcutta, maybe equal to a boat club or Adyar in Chennai. So we need to really look at how micro markets within these ecosystems really operate. And what we have tried to do is to really look at the opportunity within those micro markets and really organize ourselves around those micro markets. The focus on ecosystem, again, is to really look at the complete ecosystem. For example, Tata Motors has a large ecosystem. It has the corporate banking requirement, employees. It has a dealer ecosystem. It has a supplier ecosystem. So how do you look at the whole ecosystem and look at a model which serves the ecosystem rather than just serve a particular product or a particular customer? Collaboration, external partnerships, clearly again, needless to say that in a world which all of us are aware is going to be heavily digitized, and technology is going to be the real framework. It also is important for us to really build network of external partnerships and partners, and not really expect that everything will be done by you. So again, it's a very different cultural negotiation that needs to be done, because this is again not something that comes naturally to corporations, especially to big brands, to really collaborate, because it would mean a lot of negotiation and creating a win-win kind of a situation, which again is a very important skill that needs to be embedded within corporations. Bank to bank tech, again, I'm not going to touch upon it. I think Rakesh has done a brilliant job in laying out the framework and the opportunities and the kind of change that is hitting all of us. Clearly, banks, I'm happy to hear that we seem to be the better amongst the lots. We always thought that we were not doing as well, but it's good to hear that BFSI sector has done some good work. But that said, as Rakesh mentioned, I think the opportunity for us in technology, digitization, even in data, is huge. And all of us understand that banks are probably the largest repository of information and data across segments, but unfortunately the data is not data for us, right? The way it's captured, the way we manage it, we do very little, honestly, at this stage, leveraging that data that we have. Now, again, process decongestion and operational flexibility. I think Rakesh mentioned, ease of I think the two portions you mentioned, right, Rakesh? One was and friction, reducing friction and personalization. So in some sense, personalization is something that I think all of us are, again, hurtling towards reasonably well. But reducing friction, again, is a massive challenge, because, as all of us know, the legacy banks, and today we were all considered to be new age private sector banks, and today we are not so young as we were. So we have a history of processes, legacy systems, etc., which often come in the way of easing friction and serving the customers end-to-end. Risk and compliance, again, regulated entity. these are frameworks which are non-negotiable. So everything and anything that we do is within the broad framework of the risk and compliance framework, which we have to operate, and that's something that is a non-negotiable. Now, I really want to touch upon some of the aspects of, and I don't think we can do justice in 15 minutes, but I certainly want to touch upon some of the core anchors that we have negotiated. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to making technology happen is not technology. In fact, the challenge of AI, challenge of technology is actually, if you were to look at it, if you were to really split the challenges as technical challenge and an adaptable challenge, the technical challenges are indeed challenges, but I think they are surmountable challenges. And if you were to look at technology platform solutions, at least the top banks, if you see, more or less give or take, the front-end interfaces would broadly be similar. One can argue a feature here and feature there. But the real challenge is to really make it happen within the corporation. And one of the biggest challenges of transformation is at the leadership. Often what happens is that, it's easy, and I often participate in various HR conferences where you talk of mindset change, and we talk about how we need to bring young employees and we need to change the mindset of our employees. But I think that's distracting. That's actually pushing the problem away. The real challenge is with the top 50, 100 managers in the corporation. And for us, I think the biggest change that we had to bring about was in the way we really organized ourselves. So, as I mentioned, banking is an organization that's constructed on products and segments. So, in many ways, our performance management systems that we had created within the corporation celebrated individual products and individual department success and even individual successes, while we all stood on the top of the cliff and screened for collaboration. So it's not that we didn't know collaboration was required, but we really didn't know how to make it happen, because in some sense we spoke good English of collaboration, but the underlying structures in many ways really push people to play as individual players. And it's often said in simple engineering terms, and many of you would relate to it, that in a control system, right? It's very important to when you want to really maximize the entire system, it's very important that each of the subsystems operate at different levels of efficiency. In engineering, if you try to maximize every subsystem to its maximum efficiency, the overall system will be inefficient. So for us, how to really ensure that if I have to really maximize opportunity at an ICICI Bank ecosystem level, it's possible at various points of time, various departments, various products will have to operate at different levels of efficiency for that particular transaction. That was possible only when we actually did away with the complete performance management system as it is traditionally now deployed in most corporations. So we went and actually took away individual goal sheets, individual KPIs. We have about 140,000 employees. None of them have individual KPIs and goal sheets. A bit scary sometimes when you think of it. We actually have anchored ourselves around one common goal at the institution level, and all the 140,000 employees get assessed against just one goal. Slightly radically different from what probably market would do. Obviously, there are some questions around that, but I think it's a working model for us. We have now almost in the 5th year of it, and it's really worked wonders for us. I can tell you as an HR professional, I think that's a great system for us to really consider and evaluate. I'm not for one suggesting that this is the system to be followed everywhere, but I'm sure that this is a system that is worth considering if it's going to meet the objectives that you're looking for. The second one, and most important, is banking is a game of trust. And in some sense, all the speakers alluded to it. I think there are two risks that I think banking sector has not fully seen, certainly not in India as yet. One is the cyber security risk, and second is the reputation risk. I think, and all of us alluded to the fact that as most banks get digital and most transactions get digital, I think the cyber security risk is certainly something that all banks, and we heard comments like, if something were to really go wrong with your platform, it's very difficult to really get customers to trust the platform all over again. So that's going to be something that the banks are really going to really be worried about and really going to do a lot of work there. The second is the part of reputation, and I guess a lot of it is also around the way we have conducted ourselves as a banking sector. And I often say this to my own colleagues in the bank that if there are two professions in India where, where trust should have been the highest, but unfortunately is eroded a bit today, is one is the doctors and second is the bankers, right? Today you go to a clinic of a doctor, and if the doctor were to prescribe a couple of tests for you, is always a concern in your mind to say that is this test for me or is it for the EMI of the machine, right? That's a concern, right? And there's a doubt that often creeps into you because you never in the past had this doubt because a doctor was a trusted person. He was in fact as close to God as one can be. So you almost believed whatever he said was absolute truth. But today you don't. You take a second opinion, you take a third opinion, and often you find that maybe some things were not required. I guess to some extent the bankers also have done this to ourselves. So, if you were to look at some of the products that we hawk in the marketplace, sometimes the push that we have had through our own internal structures of incentives, etc., we may have sold products to customers which the customers may not be requiring at that point of time. So in some sense, there is a bit of a gray around our own practices that we may have adopted. We believe that that is something that as banking sector as a whole, I'm sure all banks are seriously looking at it, and I'm sure that is something that all of us have to work on. So what we have clearly communicated to our employees, and we have done away with all our internal incentives, performance management systems, which could in some sense push the employee to do something which may not be appropriate. So we are very clear that we will only work with products that are fair to the bank and fair to the customer. We often say in a colloquial lingo that try and sell products to your customers which you would sell only to your brothers and sisters. That's the kind of trust that we have to build, and I think there is going to be a huge balance and value to the trust that each of these brands are going to build. I mentioned decongestion. Again, this is something that in the manufacturing sector, I think they've done brilliantly. I'm sure most of us who work there will understand there's something called a working capital that gets locked in with inventory that is work in progress. And how to really eliminate that inefficiency is something that most manufacturing companies work because there's huge money sitting there. In banking sector after all, because it is information that flows from desk to desk, we often do not really measure the inefficiency of how many steps the processes have to take within the bank to really convert it into an outcome for the customer. And every time it hits a desk for a decision, there is going to be a delay and there is going to be cost being added to the transaction. So to us, the biggest, I would say, work now is happening is to really reduce this friction within the bank so that we're able to get back to the customers at the earliest. I won't touch about everything else, but again, the last point is 2 points I would touch is care and passion. Care again has been fundamental for us as an institution. Care for us is something as an ethos that we drive within the bank, very clearly for all our employees, because we want to believe that all the 140,000 employees serve the institution, and it's our duty to ensure that they get a great working environment. We've had numerous stories, and this is not something that we do as an HR team. It's not something we've done yesterday. It's been the part of a DNA of ICICI for the last, over the 50, 60 years that we have served. Once you're with ICICI, the bank has done everything possible to make sure that the employees are fully taken care of. Very often we extend it even to their immediate family. Not just that, and we heard Dr. Varun mentioning, we as a bank also believe that we have to be a responsible brand organization when it comes to community. Definitely through ICICI Foundation, we have done some outstanding work. We have committed a lot of our funds to healthcare. We do skilling, or 2 lakh professionals in India have benefited to this process. Now, we've also done a lot of work with the armed forces. We do work with our wildlife sanctuaries. We do a lot of work with some of the rural ecosystems. So a whole lot of work that's happening across. But I think more than that, I think what we've started doing now is to really encourage our employees to participate in some of these activities, initiatives, which I think is the best way in which we can really expose our employees and our brand to really serve the communities they serve in a manner that is beyond just banking. So that's another big push that we have within the bank. The last is I want to touch upon this whole thing on brand and learning. Rakesh touched upon it. I think if there's one learning that all of us have had, post the pandemic, is that, I can tell you for sure that, almost at all points of time, we always believed that, we had it all, we fixed it all. And within the bank also we have something called a BCP, business continuity plan, where we look at various scenarios, like Hyderabad goes down, then what happens, call center in Bombay goes down, data center goes down. There are various scenarios that we had planned for, and we thought we all had it, tied up. Until COVID hit, and we realized that not just us, none of our BCP plans ever envisaged that every city, every state, every country would go down at the same time, right? So the best of countries, the most powerful countries, the most powerful organizations, all of them were brought to the knees during this phase. And I think what it really taught is the lesson of humility to all the corporations and to all the organizations, to say that, you cannot at any time believe that you know it all. And that's true for most individuals too. I think the process to say that there will be such changes that will hit you, and no one would have even planned for what COVID would have hit, but it kind of brought out the resilience of various corporations and how to really respond to that. And I think the learning for us is that, I'm not saying a COVID will come back to us, but COVID-like situations, will possibly occur more often than what we thought it would. And hence, it's extremely important for organizations. And I think it's very difficult. And I've been through various conferences where people talk about what are the skills of future. How do you really predict future? I think that's a futile exercise. I don't think we ever got it wrong. Look at the IT sector, right? They talked of, the great, talent crunch about 2 years back, and they went on a, crazy hiring, program. And then a year and a half later, they, really went on to really, reduce their workforce by various methods, right? So, you couldn't predict for the next year and a half, 2 years as to what would happen. How do you really predict beyond that? I think so. Prediction is a game that's going to be very difficult. But what I think corporations should do is to really create a very agile learning platform, an agile learning culture, which means that I really don't know what will happen 2 years from now, but I know for sure that if something were to happen, I have the resilience and ability to really change and adapt myself to those changes. So that, I think, adaptability, agility, and bringing a learning culture is the only way in which I think you can hedge yourself against changes of the future. And the last and the most important point is that in corporations, when you drive this change, you've got to have 140,000 employees who are with you for this change. And I know for sure that you won't have at all points of time people agreeing to your change. And I think people have their points of view. But hence, at the time of hiring, we are absolutely clear that the only question and only test that we do is this person someone who is fit for us in terms of a culture and attitude? We do not give any valence to technical skills or any other functional skills which we believe that we can teach them within the organization. But what we find it very difficult is to really change a person's approach or attitude or a view or a belief system, which I think is a far more difficult change for us. So we are, and I'm not saying we are perfect, but for sure I know that if those 3-4 questions do not pass through and we believe the person is not with us, I would rather not have them on board. Because the two things that banks have to do really well, they're actually home safe, which is one, if you always ensure that you onboard a good employee, you don't really have to bother about it after that. Second is obviously ensure that you always onboard a good customer who makes sure that he will always add value to you and have a great partner with you. So these are some of the core anchors that we've been driving. And to me, the cultural part of it was something that I thought I'll highlight. Thank you all for your time and hope it was useful. Thank you.